Hello everyone, this is ICBs here, and today I just wanted to sit down and talk about Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers and how it's going to impact DC Universe and from that whole point of view. And yeah, I don't really think that this deal is good considering the history of Warner Brothers. And I was just going through this CNN article and just looking at the history of the kind of work that Warner Brothers has done, and they have a big portfolio of movies going back to like 1920s, and it's really interesting. Like they started off from the musical on the show and then kept going with the a new Looney Tunes cartoon, which I grew up watching Looney Tunes and I do not recognize any of these characters. I don't know what was going on. But yeah, like they have a big portfolio with, one of the legendary movies like The Wizard of Oz, which was very, very legendary due to its, VFX at the time. And continuing forward, they definitely made a lot of, memorable movies at the time: Bonnie and Clyde, The Exorcist, and The Color of Purple, Blade Runner. Like goddamn, like they really were cooking. And later on they acquired DC in 1969, which was at the time known as National Periodical Publications. Then they changed the name to DC Comic Books. So yeah, like they ended up making a ton of movies, the Matrix movies, and of course you would be remiss if you didn't mention the Harry Potter movies. So yeah, like also Game of Thrones, that's a big thing. So yeah, like Warner Brothers really have a big portfolio. I really don't like this deal, and I don't care what a lot of people were saying that Netflix produces low budget movies, and Netflix just has that look whenever you watch their movies or their shows. Like it just the lighting, the direction, and everything. You just know that it's something that's made by Netflix, whether it's like the low budget feel of it or just the stale story writing. It just very oozes the Netflix aura. And I don't even want to talk about that because this isn't about Netflix's style of filmmaking. It doesn't really matter what they are doing and what they will do with this after this deal has been made, because the deal itself is very controversial, because something like this should not happen, because movies should be made by as diverse companies as possible to keep things fresh. But as things are progressing, film and media is turning into a monopoly more and more. Like like this should not happen, but like in a system like capitalist system, these things are continuing to happen. And some people might even go ahead and defend something like this by saying, well, if Netflix had the money, why couldn't they just buy this something that they wanted? And it sounds reasonable, but when you really think about it, it creates a monopoly, and monopoly is a no-no, a big no-no. And even people who are big capitalists would agree with me that like this is something that shouldn't happen. And this was, I don't, again, I'm not really sure on this thing, so you can do your own research, but there were rules in the 60s, 70s or whatever, that you couldn't do things like this, that bigger companies just couldn't acquire their competition. It just couldn't happen. But as time went on and richer people got richer, and the anti monopoly laws made it harder for richer people to get richer, so they lobbied into politics and they changed and amended laws so that they could continue their acquisitions and continue to get richer. This is why you see a lot more billionaires nowadays. It's just more easier for these people to get rich, because once you just get past that threshold of 1 billion, it's just very easy for you to just snowball after that, because it's like really easy for you to just continue to get rich and accumulate wealth afterwards, because like there's nothing stopping you from acquiring small businesses and whatnot. So yeah, like I don't want to get into all of that. Like there are people who can explain this thing far better than me, but bigger companies owning even bigger companies, companies. Like this wasn't like Warner Brothers is not a small company, but these big companies eating each other alive. It's like watching a big whale fight with a kraken. It doesn't really. It's not gonna end well. Whatever, whoever is out there standing after that fight is the big monster you're going to have to deal with. And right now, that monster seems to be Netflix. But yeah, like the big question that I started this video off from was how is it going to impact the DC universe? And like I mentioned towards the beginning of this video, that Netflix does have that, very low budget quality to it. And I will definitely say that Netflix has a very bad way of handling politics. Like it just goes very heavy handed. Like I do think that politics should be introduced, and politics can have a positive impact in movies, but the way Netflix handles it is a bit too aggressive and doesn't really care what the fans have to say about that. Like I always think that it's very dangerous when a company gets so rich and so big that it can just ignore what people say. Like for instance, the Witcher show, like people were very angry about the direction that it was going, but apparently Netflix just didn't really care. Like it thought that they could do whatever the hell they wanted and people will watch it anyways. And even if they don't watch it, who the hell cares? They will just make 500 more shows that they like. Like they don't really care if Witcher does well or not. But for the fans of the series, of the games and the books, it matters a lot to them. Like this is the franchise that you're really looking forward to it. But when it goes into the hands of people who are so powerful and so rich that even if their show doesn't really perform well, it's just like another hiccup. It's not even a big deal for them. But if the Witcher franchise was in the hands of a much smaller studios who was creating, whether it was a series or a movie, they had to deal with much bigger stakes, because if this show or this movie failed, it would mean that their entire company could go bankrupt. But Netflix doesn't really have to worry about that. They can just make a bad show and then just walk it off. Like it doesn't even bother them. So the handling of the Witcher show was really horrible because of the way they changed the story to fit their narrative the best they wanted, sidelining Henry Cavill, who was a big fan of the series. He read the books, played the games, and probably understood the series of Witcher better than anyone who was working at that show. So they just sidelined him, which was a very bad taste, because at the end of the day, you're making these shows and movies for the fans, and when you like disenfranchise the fans, then it's like, who are you even making the show for? Are you making it for yourself? Are you just making it because you're there working for a very rich company who has so much money that's just going to throw money at you, and you're all just there like robots working and doing a job, and then you go home and you don't even care about what you just made? Because that's what Witcher feels like nowadays. But yeah, when it comes to DC Universe, I do think that it's gonna be largely the same, because I think that Netflix will still keep James Gunn around. And I could be wrong. This is just my idea that maybe James Gunn might be more powerful after this acquisition. I don't know. Like James Gunn was already handed the helm of DC Universe, but hey, maybe, I don't know. Like I have a very tingling feeling, you could say it's my spidey sense, that Netflix is going to like James Gunn and they're going to allow him to continue making, shaping the DC Universe. So yeah, I do think that that's going to keep happening. So when it comes to DC Universe, for a lot of people who don't like James Gunn, yeah, you're not going to like what's going to come next. But for people like me who do like James Gunn, I wouldn't say that I like his style. Like he probably uses a humor too much to hide the awkwardness of silent moments a bit. But yeah, I do think that James Gunn is a nerd himself. He understands comic books, movies, and that's what I want. That's the kind of guy I want to make movies about DC Universe, because he understands those characters really well. So yeah, I do think that James Gunn is going to make a good DC Universe even after the acquisition by Netflix. So those are my thoughts, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, it's time for a Goodbye.